Tell me, what is astrology?
Yeah, astrology is the study of the position of bodies in the night sky, and we generally look at the moon, the sun, we look at the planets Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and in traditional systems we stop at Saturn, but in a more modern, adapted age, we try to add Uranus and Neptune to the mix when considering planets. But traditionally, we'll focus on Sun, Moon, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, Rahu, and
So what is it
Ketu.
for? Like, what does astrology explain about your life?
Astrology can tell you very many things about a person. It can tell you about their personality, their leanings, what their karmas are, what they struggle with, attitudes they may have, mental state. Also, like conditions during birth, when you were growing up, things involving your family, things involving your preferences around households, how expressive you are, how to yourself you are.
Okay. Okay, so let's begin going one by one through each planet.
Yes.
Beginning with the most important planet. Which one do you look at first when you're reading your chart?
Yeah. So the sun sign is the most well-known, thing in astrology when it comes to your first placements. It's the easiest to be able to tell, and you don't even need to pull up a chart. The sun represents the soul. It can represent the father. It represents authority, creativity. The sun is considered its own friend. It's its own best friend. It has everything that it needs, the sun. It is the creator of all the different planets. It's considered the father or the mother of the solar system. But considering it more masculine or feminine, it's considered more of a masculine body in astrology. So it's associated with the sign of Leo. It rules Leo. It is involved, with kings, leaders, people who hold authority. It's a very creative planet. Imagine you had your own world you built from scratch. That's where the sun's coming from when you're talking about sun in astrology.
Gotcha. So that's the masculine. Now coming to the feminine, the moon.
Yes.
What does she
the
represent?
the moon sign. The moon is very interesting. It tells you a bit more about the mind of the person, the emotions, the mental state. It also relates to the mother traditionally. The moon is a very fast-moving body. It is the fastest moving body in all of astrology. It circles the zodiac in 28 days, and it, as a result, is associated with a faster, pace. Kind of like how your mind jumps from one subject to the other, or emotionally you're feeling mood swings. The same way the moon moves around the zodiac quickly, it can cover a lot of ground compared to the other bodies. It has to do with creativity as well. The moon is also a creative body in the solar system, and it also has a lot to do with rhythm. It's a very rhythmic planet. It circles every 28 days, and it's important because the sun and the moon create the nodes, and we'll get to those later.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the nodes, Rahu, Ketu. Let's get into them right now then.
You want to talk about Rahu and Ketu?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to get into the heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So talking about the nodes, the way the ecliptic is in the sky, so the ecliptic encompasses all the different zodiac constellations in a flat plane or a wheel kind of going horizontal with the Earth. The moon's orbit is slightly off from that ecliptic plane, and as a result, the sun and the moon don't always have an eclipse every month. The moon and the sun are in different planes, but where they meet are called the nodes. You have the north node and the south node. The north node is called Rahu, and the south node is called Ketu. Now, let's get into mythology of Rahu Ketu. So, once, long time ago, in Indian tradition, and this is a very, interesting story, but there was a demon that wanted to steal the elixir of the gods, And this demon was very crafty and clever. He wanted to stop at nothing to get that elixir of immortality. During a great banquet, this demon managed to make it in, and this was a great banquet with Vishnu and Indra and all the different deities. And this demon was invited, or was able to make the list, and he made it in. And actually, just as he was about to drink, he was caught about to take the elixir, and he was outed as an imposter. And very swiftly, Vishnu, just as one drop touched Rahu, Ketu's, or this demon's lips, his head was cut off by Vishnu, and his body and his head were separated. Yet, because he had tasted the elixir of immortality, he was still immortal. So the nodes are considered immortal, but they're separate. Mm-hmm. The head is Rahu, and think of Rahu kind of like an obsessive, mm-hmm. Yes.
Magnifies everything.
Magnifies everything. Wants, global fame and name, wants all the money, all the material, without a body. This head is like a bottomless pit. It will eat, it will consume anything to feel full, but it's never enough with Rahu. Rahu, I've heard, is described as like a very bright light, but with a very, little flicker of light in the middle. So it looks, much brighter than it actually is. It looks bigger than it actually is. Not that Rahu or Ketu are physical bodies, that it reflects light from the sun, but either way, they are considered shadow planets. Mm-hmm. Ketu is considered the body of this demon, and without the head, the body becomes directionless, and the body actually has all the power for, carrying you, doing maneuvers. Ketu is also a strong planet, but unlike Rahu that tells us to, obsess, Ketu's telling us to detach and let go and think about things, or rather not think about them at all, to kind of let things go and become detached from the material world, whereas Rahu is pulling us towards the material world.
Okay, so now let's get into the other planets, starting with Mercury.
Mercury in Greco-Roman mythology is considered the messenger to the gods, the messenger to the king, the sun. In Vedic, there are some similar associations. Mercury is a planet of intellect, of speech, of male siblings, or rather siblings in general, younger siblings. They are represented by Mercury. Mercury has a lot to do with problem solving. It has to do with service, has to do with communication, writing. Math can be seen by Mercury. Mercury is important when it comes to financial astrology. Mercury is an interesting planet. It can tell you a lot about the intellect of a person. It can tell you a lot about how they think.
Communicate.
It can tell you a lot about, their speech and, generally how they parse and interpret data from the world that they're experiencing.
Yeah. Now let's come to the beautiful planet, Venus.
Venus, yes, the planet of love and romance. Venus is a planet that encapsulates peaceful times, times of prosperity, times of, setting up the family unit. Venus can represent femininity in a woman. It can represent the arts, textiles, fabrics, fine items, comforts. It can represent luxury food. It can represent a beautiful woman. It can represent women in general for a man in his chart, or the wife. It can be the Karka, or the planet of the spouse.
Yeah.
And it rules a lot of the opulent and luxury things. It's also a knowledgeable planet. It's also, like Mercury, has a lot of different knowledge about different types of art forms, different types of expression, and is a very neat planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. One question is, why is Earth not represented in these planets?
I saw an interesting post about that. Yeah, so when talking about the Earth in Western astrology, there's a non-physical body called the part of fortune. But in Vedic, it's considered that the ascendant represents the earth in astrology. Right now, actually, the earth isn't really tracked at all, but the ascendant kind of gives you, it's only something you can see on earth as someone born here. I was also reading this post. They say if you were to grow up on Mars and, be born there, say we ever colonize Mars, the ascendant on Mars would represent your Mars placement, whereas Earth would be its own body in the solar system.
So in this hypothetical world, just quick detour, if a person was born on Mars, what would Earth represent astrologically?
One person's opinion was that it would represent ancestral roots and ancestral karma, because the Earth is, where humans come from. It is our root. It is our support structure. It's all humanity's ever known at this point in our evolution and this stage in our life. It is our home. It is our breadbasket. It is our promised land in all intents and purposes.
That's beautiful. Now let's go back to our normal scenario. What does Mars represent?
Mars, so the planet of war. Mars is associated with aggression, masculinity in a man, sex drive. It has to do with battles and disputes. It has to do with, taking action, being an action-oriented person. It has a lot to do with, being a soldier. In what ways are you a soldier in this life? You may not be in the military, but you still have resolve, you still have the grit, or you still have the aggression of a soldier when it comes to different aspects. For a woman, this is the karka of a man or a boyfriend. It represents male siblings, specifically the male siblings or male friends. It's indicative strongly of males or masculine traditional traits.
Interesting. What's the next one? Saturn?
Jupiter.
Jupiter, the wisest planet.
Yes. So moving out to the next planet, we have Jupiter. Jupiter, or Guru in Vedic astrology, is associated with optimism, luck, higher learning, travel, pilgrimage, spirituality, philosophy. Think of Jupiter as like a pure and good teacher that wants to uplift you and provide you the guidance. Jupiter is an important planet. It's one of the slower moving planets. It takes 12 years to go around the zodiac and 5 years to orbit the sun. Or was it 5 years? I know it's 5 astronomical units away. It's a slightly slower moving planet. Jupiter is also interesting because whenever you have your Jupiter return, whenever Jupiter returns to its spot that's in your natal chart, it's considered you've had a Jupiter return, and that's considered a milestone of gaining knowledge and maturity as you grow up. So once you've hit the third or the fourth Jupiter return, you're considered more mature and knowledgeable and wise.
Wow. And then, okay, so that's Jupiter. And just a quick question here. So when there's the natural placement of planets on your chart, but then there's also the placement of where they are now.
Transits.
Transits. Oh, okay. So maybe that's a separate discussion.
Yeah,
okay.
Transits. Yeah, that can be another.
Because you said the Jupiter returns.
Yeah, Jupiter will return. Every 12 years, it will be in the same spot in the sky. It does go retrograde, so it does take a bit longer from our perspective to circle the entire zodiac.
Okay, gotcha. Saturn, one of the slower planets.
Saturn, the most slow-moving planet in all of traditional astrology. It is the furthest body in our solar system we can see with the naked eye in the night sky as a bright body. Saturn is a planet of limitations, hard work. It is our karma when it comes to what we have to do in this world. It represents restrictions. It can represent depression, anxiety, things that not moving quick enough in our life, things that are slow, things that are limiting, things that feel like a brick wall. And literally, Saturn represents stone structures. It represents long-lived structures like the skyscrapers. We didn't also talk about which signs these planets rule either. Would you like to cover that after this?
Yeah, we could do that after you finish Saturn, yeah.
Yes. So Saturn is a tough planet. It does get a lot of negative rep, but a good Saturn and working with Saturn can provide you with prosperous results, with steady work and discipline.
Yeah. Okay. So those should be all the planets, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now, before we get into the signs, sometimes there's different terms called debilitated, exalted, and all that. What is that? Are there three of them? Three classes?
Yeah, so dignity of the planets.
Okay.
And it's important to talk about which signs they rule first, just so you have an idea. So planets have different levels of dignity depending on where they are and which sign. Some planets do very well in some signs, and some planets struggle. Some planets are comfortable, it's their own sign. And then some planets are debilitated, they struggle to function well on their own. Let's talk about sign rulerships, shall we?
Please.
So let's start from the beginning. Aries is ruled by Mars, and Mars also rules the sign of Scorpio, the 8th sign in the zodiac. Venus rules Taurus and Libra, the 2nd and the 7th sign in the zodiac. The 3rd sign and the 6th sign, so Gemini and Virgo respectively, is ruled by Mercury. Cancer is ruled by the moon exclusively, and then the sun exclusively rules Leo. Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces, the 9th and the 12th sign in the zodiac. And the 10th and the 11th sign, Capricorn and Aquarius, are ruled by Saturn.
Interesting. And do these signs kind of give the characteristic of the planet? For example, because Sun rules Leo, Leo is very expressive, the sun is very bright and expressive. Is there a correlation between the two?
Yes, absolutely. You know, you can consider Leo as like the kingdom and the sun is the king. They are meant for each other. Cancer is also, you know, analogously considered to be like the home, the nurturing place, the hidden shelter, the quiet refuge for your emotions, and a place where the mother is typically seen, like the home or in a caretaker role.
Right.
So Cancer is like the zone or the house where that takes place.
Okay.
Now let's talk a bit more about planets' dignity.
Yeah.
So planets can be exalted. They can do very well in signs that they don't necessarily control. So let's start with the first planet, the sun, or rather the first body. The sun is a star, but the sun is in its own sign in Leo, but it gets exalted in Aries. This is because Aries is considered a very active sign. It's very supportive of someone who is a king, who's individualistic, who's thinking of themselves, who's thinking of what they want and what their goals are, and being action-oriented. It's ruled by Mars, but the sun does very well in Aries. The sun also doesn't do too well in the sign directly opposite, and that's Libra. Libra is ruled by Venus. The Venus and the sun are generally not friendly with each other. Libra is a sign of compromise, coming together, agreements, relationships, kind of considering and balancing other people's perspectives and opinions. You know, a king isn't naturally, you know, apt for such, you know, agreements in most cases. The sun has to dim its spark in a sense in order to function in a sign like Libra. And there's a lot of frustration. There can be ego clashes. There can be, you know, disagreements. And there can be, you know, weakness around ego and identity, which are other things that the sun represents when the sun is in Libra. The sun is considered in its fall in Taurus, which is also ruled by Venus. It isn't particularly badly affected, but it does not gain strength and does struggle some. Now let's get to the next body in the solar system and its points of exaltation, debilitation, and fall.
Yeah.
The moon.
So exaltation is good, debilitation is bad, but could be worked on, but fall is just bad.
Fall is moderate struggle. It's not
okay.
you know, it's not an absolute.
So debilitation is the worst.
Debilitation is considered the worst.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The moon's own sign is Cancer, but the moon is exalted in Taurus, The moon does very well in Taurus. Taurus is a sign of steadiness, a sign of, wealth, comfort, food. It's a sign of art. The moon does well in a sign like Taurus and is considered exalted there because Taurus is a very, it's a steady sign. It's good for the moon. It's a practical place for the moon to be, where emotions and mindset can be more stable. The moon is debilitated right across from Taurus in Scorpio. Scorpio is considered a darker sign. It's considered a sign of transformation, of inner work, of trauma, of sudden ups and downs. It has to do with hidden things. It has to do with occult. It has to do with instability in general. It is not a very stable place. And when the moon is situated in the 8th sign or the 8th house, the moon loses directional strength. It becomes debilitated. The moon struggles in that kind of chaotic and tumultuous place that is Scorpio.
Interesting. And then you could kind of add, when you combine the two, let's say moon in Leo, for example, then it's like the emotions are expressive. Is that a...
Yeah. When we get to placements and what those represent and how they would play out, yes, moon in Leo makes someone maybe not as much of a leader in the traditional sense as sun in Leo, but it makes someone, a caring leader. It makes someone a nurturing leader. It makes someone expressive and creative as well. And in different combinations can make you confident. The moon is in its fall when it's in Capricorn. It's considered a more stressful sign for the moon. The Saturn and moon are not generally considered friendly with each other, but in Capricorn, the moon does struggle with some limitations and perhaps depression as well. And there might be some emotional blunting going on because of Saturn.
Interesting. Now let's add the context of the houses as well, because we could go through all of them, but then I want to add the context of the house. So let's begin with, so there's 12 different houses in a, let's say a chart.
Yes.
First one, the lagna. This is it's the identity, right?
Yes, this is the most important one, the first house, because it determines where the other 11 are in your chart. Now, there are different ways to look at houses, or different house systems, but traditionally in Vedic astrology, we use whole sign. So, say your ascendant is 15 degrees Cancer, the entire sign of Cancer is your lagna sign, or your ascendant. Some systems will base the houses on where your rising sign is, its degrees in a certain sign, and will start, say, at 15 degrees Cancer and go to 15 degrees Leo for different systems. But for simplicity, let's talk about whole sign. The first house, it represents the moment of birth. It represents the personality, the life path, the direction you're going, the things that you're doing, the habits that you make, which is also going to come up later, habits. But it represents a lot about your identity. It represents a lot about the physical body. It can represent the face, the head. It's also a house that shows things that can go towards your career, but that's not the main thing. The lagna is very important. It can tell you a lot about a person. It can tell you about every other house as well. But let's move into the second house. So from the first house into the second, you move towards the personality, the identity, the life path, and you start to go towards others that are in close association. This is like early in childhood in the second house. This is your family. This is your values. It can also show your sense of self-worth. It represents the face and how you kind of present yourself to others. It can represent your dignity. It can represent just, material wealth in general. It represents your voice, literally your voice and how you talk. It's also, a place of, it can represent the mouth. It can represent eating. It can represent hydration, water, things that we intake into our bodies.
Third house, communication.
Third house, yes, is a communication ruled house. Specifically, it rules writing and mass media, has to do with nowadays, especially, online usage, being on the internet. It has to do with our siblings. It has to do with, or specifically our younger siblings. Has to do with, people in our neighborhood, in our general surrounding, people in our immediate environment, our peers. It represents our habits as well. Represents, how our mind kind of ticks and how it functions.
Okay.
It also represents courage and bravery and risk taking.
Right. Okay. So let's say, for example, Jupiter's in the third house.
Jupiter in the third house. Now, this would make someone who is, a very, much a teaching type of person, someone who's a teacher, someone who likes to talk about their philosophy, who likes to share about their beliefs and their viewpoints on things. They like to be in the company of people who are educated. They like to talk about educated topics. It depends on the sign that Jupiter's in, of course, but generally Jupiter in the third house makes someone, and you can also look at the aspects of Jupiter from the third house. It does make someone very social. It makes someone, very talkative and very, kind of outgoing.
Interesting. Okay. Let's come to the fourth house. But before I come to the fourth house, is there kind of a pattern that we're noticing? The first house starts with the identity, then the second house is family, then the third is communication, then the fourth is your home. The fifth is children, maybe. So, is it expanding the person's,
Yeah, you could think of it like that. There are ways that the previous house kind of plays into the next house, and how they all kind of do flow together to tell kind of a narrative, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do the fourth house.
The fourth house, as you mentioned, does represent the home, but more specifically, it's your inner sanctum. It's your emotions. It's originally the position ruled by the moon, because the moon rules the fourth sign, Cancer. The fourth house has a lot to do with vehicles, comfort. It has to do with maternal lineage. It has to do with homeland, where you were born, like the city you were born or the state you were born. That's seen by the fourth house. It also shows, deeper, more emotional sides of yourself that are more private. It's more of a private house.
Okay. Interesting. What are good planets usually that are good in the fourth house that do well?
Moon, Venus, benefics will do well in the fourth house. They will provide you with more peace of mind. You also need to you need to look at the ruler of the fourth
sign,
house in order to see its dignity as well.
Okay, makes sense. Fifth.
The fifth house is when you start to come out and express yourself more towards the public. It's a sign of children. It's a sign of education. It can represent your undergraduate degree in college. It's a house of your creativity, projects that you build, or if you literally give life to someone, you have a child, that will play out in the fifth house. It also represents romance, having fun with friends, has to do with intellect, has to do with learning aptitude. A good planet here would be Mercury or Jupiter. Jupiter is the original, or does represent the fifth house as well.
Interesting.
It also represents mantras.
Mantras, like literal mantras?
Yes.
Oh wow. I personally have my fifth house ruler is Aries and have Saturn in Aries, debilitated.
Yeah, I understand that, and that might put a bit of limitation or frustration around your self-expression. That might make it hard to see your projects through, or it may feel like you want to start a project, you feel very driven at first, but you realize there's all these different parts and pieces that need to come together, and it requires discipline.
Persistence.
And persistence, yes.
Yeah. But eventually, the nature of Saturn is to pay off, right? Eventually?
Yes, it's represented of your karma, and Saturn can pay off. It's important to look at the dignity of Saturn in other divisional charts, which is another topic. But the dignity of your planet matters. But I know someone who has Saturn in Aries, and she's actually very driven and disciplined.
Okay.
So one thing to keep in mind about debilitated planets is they can still function well and they can still provide results, even if their dignity isn't the best. And sometimes exalted planets can create interesting results as well. Sometimes if you have something strong and you turn the dial all the way up, you can get some unwanted results.
Too much, yeah.
But if you turn it down, sometimes you feel like you're lacking something.
Interesting. Let's get to the sixth one.
The sixth house. This is a house that's not as liked. It's not as, it's feared. It represents debt, enemies, disease, but it also represents your fortitude and ability to overcome problems and to have problem solving. It does represent, legal disputes. It does represent routine. Your daily routine is kind of ruled by the sixth house. The way that you serve others is also seen by the sixth house. It's originally, associated with Virgo, the sixth sign, so there's a lot of commonality when it comes to service, honing your craft and working maybe, in a not so appreciated role. It's considered one of the Dashtana houses. So it's considered classically fairly challenging, but a sixth house can work well for you in building your routine.
And what planets do well or bad there?
Well, Mars would be an example of a planet that could do well or bad in the sixth house. It can make you a very strong, resolved fighter, someone who faces challenges head on, but it can also lead to aggression or it can lead to seeking out fights. It depends. That's one way to look at it. A planet that wouldn't do too well there would be Venus, because Venus is originally debilitated in Virgo. And while Venus loses directional strength in that sign, it can make someone analytical and calculative towards love. It can make someone, sometimes distant, I've seen, or, not willing to address issues or avoidant when it comes to matters of romance.
Interesting. Okay. Now let's come to the favorite house of a lot of people, seventh.
The seventh. Well, the seventh is, got a lot of different facets. It's the sign, or rather, it is represented by the sign that is setting as you're being born. The rising sign is coming up over the eastern horizon, whereas the descendant sign is going down below the west. This is considered classically the sign of marriage, or rather the house of marriage. It's considered a house of agreements. It's considered a house of deals. If you're in business, it represents the public. It represents the other. It also actually is associated with death, because it's literally where things are setting. And it's considered one of the ultimate unknowns. Unknowns are another theme that will come up in the later houses, but the seventh house is when you start to begin to not be as aware, when things are a little more mysterious, when you start to focus on the other, when you start to focus on, the public outside of yourself. But it is very, indicative of socializing, commitment, relationships, and business deals.
And it's right across the first house, opposite.
Always.
So it almost represents your other half, in a way?
It could.
Okay.
Strong placements in the seventh house can show a person who identifies strongly through their relationships with others. It can show someone who's, seeks, clarity or identity through others. It can also show someone who has a talent for interacting with other people or sealing the deal or working in sales.
Okay. Now let's come to the mysterious eighth house.
The eighth house. So the eighth house is directly, if you were to look at the houses laid out in the sky and also below the sky, so where you can't see basically, the ground, the eighth house is directly above the seventh house in the sky. It's right above the western horizon. And this is symbolically important because the eighth house is considered erosive to the seventh house, which is directly below it. It kind of erodes what's below it. Think about it like storms and wind kind of flow there. And, you have clouds in the sky, you have rain coming down. It's considered classically erosive of seventh house things. Now, this means there can be breaks in relationships with the eighth house. There can be sudden ups and downs. There can be hidden things, hidden karmas. It's where you keep a lot of your personal secrets. It's considered a house of joint assets and intimacy. It's considered another private house, but can change depending on different placements. It can represent inheritance. It can represent mortuaries, hospitals, sudden illness or accidents. But it's also considered a Dashtana house, like the sixth house. But the eighth house can also give you sudden gains as well. It is more neutral than what it has been classically described as.
Okay, very interesting.
It's considered a mystical and magical house as well.
Is it the house of like transformation? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Ninth house.
The ninth house is where things start to brighten up. This is the teachings of the guru, teachings of the father. It's considered a house of fortune. It's considered a house of your wisdom, your higher beliefs. Jupiter originally rules the ninth sign, so the ninth house has a lot of Jupiter qualities. It represents how you approach, things in a belief system. It can be good for, romantic placements if you're in alignment with your partner's beliefs, to have good ninth house synastry. It's fifth from the fifth.
What does that mean?
So it is 5 places away from the fifth house.
Ah, okay.
If you count 1 starting at the fifth house,
Yeah.
it's part of the Dharma trine, the first, the fifth, and the ninth house. It's important because a lot of these houses are in groups, and we can get to those at the end.
Okay.
But the ninth house is considered a fortunate house. It's considered a house of travel, of pilgrimage, of higher learning.
Okay. What generally planets do well? I guess Jupiter would be the
Jupiter
best
would
one.
do well. Venus can do well there. Mercury can do well. It can show someone who seeks out, study. It's directly opposite from the third house, which represents study, and where the ninth house is more about being the teacher.
Okay. Let's get to the public 10th.
The 10th, the highest point in the sky when you were born. That is a sign or house representing your career, your dharma, what you put out into the world, what you're going to work towards, your reputation, your public persona. It represents a lot of public-facing things in your life, especially career, but also the work that you do outside of work, the kind of work that you do, in general, even when you're off the clock, so to speak.
So like Sun would do well here.
Sun would do very well. I mean, it would show someone who would have leadership tendencies, someone who feels strongly in alignment with their work.
Okay. 11th, networks.
11th, yes, represents networks, gains, wishes, wants, desires. It represents your social circles. It represents your professional network. It represents also your elder siblings. It's considered an auspicious house. It's where a lot of your dreams are going to come true, or where a lot of your dreams may or may not be realized. It represents a lot of that, and it represents a lot of kind of humanitarian, kind of looking at the world in a bigger, from a bird's eye view.
Okay. So something like Mercury in Libra in 11th would do well.
Mercury in Libra in the 11th would do well, especially because Mercury would be in its friend's sign of Libra. Venus and Mercury are good friends in the zodiac. And that would show, in this example, someone finding a partner through friends, for a Sagittarius ascendant, having Libra in the 11th house and Gemini ruling their 7th. They would show someone who, is very social. Interesting.
Let's talk about the spiritual 12th.
The 12th is an interesting house, and it's not fully understood. Why? Because it goes beyond, it's supposed to represent what's beyond, human cognition, beyond the human experience, what happens in the final moments of your life and beyond the afterlife. It represents exits and letting go. It's a spiritual house. It represents isolated places, foreign lands, institutions. It can represent jails in the worst case, but it can also represent monasteries or temples. It's a very private house. It's very unknown. It's secret enemies that you may not even know about may be signified by the 12th house. It can represent the subconscious, the dreams that we have. It's the house of bed pleasures of all types. So getting good sleep or having intimacy with a partner can be seen by the 12th house. It represents donations. It represents giving things away. It can represent finality and endings and coming to terms in that way.
Okay, so it's like a kind of like a secret house, kind of like eighth, like a different type of flavor.
Yeah, it's also considered the Dashtana house. The 6th, 8th, and 12th are Dashtanas. Now let's get into the different groups of houses, as certain houses are considered linked, by different nature. So let's go back to the Dharma trine. The 1st, 5th, and the 9th are all kind of related to your education, it can represent spiritual paths, your morality, represents fortune, education, creativity, and fun, the Dharma trine. Now the other trine is the 3, 7, 11 trine, or the 3rd house, 7th house, and 11th house. These are exclusively your social interactions. They have a lot to do with the kind of people you meet, your communications, your partner, your networks. These 3 houses go together. The Dashtana houses, again, are the 6th, the 8th, and the 12th. And these are, ruling challenges and things that don't come easy.
Okay. What's the other grouping?
So there's another trine, the 2nd house, the 6th house, and the 10th house kind of represent a lot about our career and our work-life balance. It has to do with our inclination towards seeking out financial wealth. It can represent, our career in a nutshell and how our money and work situation is going.
Okay.
The 4th, the 8th, and the 12th, it's considered the 4th and the 8th and the 12th are considered the houses of liberation or moksha.
Yes.
These houses are very private. These are, houses of, deep emotional feelings, turmoil, and letting go. Moksha is seen as, the final liberation from death and rebirth.
Okay. That's beautiful. So now, to wrap a lot of this up, let's talk about the aspects of different planets. Which planet has the most impactful aspects? Do you know?
Well, each planet's aspects are impactful in some way.
Okay.
They all tell a different story, but not all planets have the same types of aspects. So, planets, Mercury, so all of them, first of all, have 7th aspects. They'll aspect directly across from where they're located. So every planet can do that. Every one except for Ketu, I believe. Now Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu have special aspects. They have 3 different aspects that they cast. Mars aspects 4th houses away from itself in order to protect. It also aspects 7th, which is more of a domineering, and where it's fighting, what direction it's going towards. And then the 8th house is more covert and hidden ways of achieving your goals and fighting. That is, in a nutshell, Mars's aspects. Jupiter has aspects 7 from itself, like I stated before, but it also has 5th and 9th aspects. These represent, education, and they represent luck. Wherever Jupiter aspects can provide, help and guidance in a house or, a problematic combination, Jupiter's aspect can create a big difference. It can create a pretty powerful difference.
Yeah.
It can be a saving grace, so to speak.
Yeah, so that's actually true, because in the 9th house, I have Moon with Mars with Rahu.
Yeah.
But that cluster could be really chaotic, especially in the 9th house. But since it's aspected by Jupiter's 7th aspect, because Jupiter for me is in my 3rd house, it's a saving grace.
Yeah, it does. It does help, it helps you with your wisdom. It helps you with your optimism, especially with that placement. It helps you, Jupiter in the 3rd, I mentioned it might make you much more wise when it comes to your habits and the words that you choose. you know, and even though you might have more, you know, maybe you have some differences or like some troubles with teachings in philosophy, Jupiter will guide you in that way.
Okay, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground. Is there any takeaway philosophically that people should take away from astrology or this type of work?
Yeah, astrology is very interesting. It can tell you things you would never have thought you could learn about a person based on something that would seem arbitrary, like the location of the planets. I got into astrology over a decade ago because I wanted to understand myself more and understand other people more, and I found it to be guiding. But if you study astrology, you need to learn to not obsess about your placements. You need to not worry and panic, because I've been there and I have challenging placements and you have challenging placements, and obsessing about these and worrying about them is going to create more problems for you psychologically. What's important with astrology is to practice cleanliness, to do it in good faith, you know, to learn about it and be an active student and take the subject seriously, as it's been dialed back and, you know, developed by the sages over, you know, millennia ago, but over years and years of tradition, they've been able to develop Vedic astrology and tell you with a lot of accuracy about different aspects of your life.
Yeah, and astrology is kind of like a weather map. It's going to kind of tell you about your life, but at the end of the day, it's your life, and you have more power than you think. Astrology doesn't. I don't know. I don't think I put God then astrology.
Yeah,
if you have faith in God,
and that's
the universe.
And that's the right path. That is absolutely the right path. Faith and belief and working on yourself and free will are going to make more for you than thinking limited beliefs about yourself based on your placements.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It was a pleasure, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.